ray oaks. And about this time of year, I noticed these little brown beetles coming up from the ground and trying to bore into it. What are those?
Those are probably, they may be some form of borer. Borers are not the death of trees. I mean, every tree out there has some borers in it. I don't like them. I kill them where I see them. But I guess they could potentially. You're welcome. Thanks for coming, guys. You can put some nematodes in the ground at the base of the tree, kill off the larvae of the beetles before they start turning into a beetle and coming up the tree. But unless you have a huge number of them, I'd ignore them. The other thing you could do, if they're actually walking up rather than flying up, you could wrap the trunk with your saran wrap or your aluminum foil, put some tanglefoot on there, and believe me, they can't get across it. Yes, ma'am.
You said you were going to talk about tropical bougainvillea.
Okay, I'll come to that in just one second. Other general pruning questions first.
I have one more question about that pittosporum. If it's kind of been a peppies for probably 12 or 15 years, the dwarfs, but they're kind of in a shady area. Is that why maybe they're not so healthy too? Improving them back?
Probably they are suffering right now from drought. Unless you're fertilizing them regularly, they may need more fertilizer. Dwarf pits will grow in bright shade. If it's dense shade, yeah, they're going to be less healthy. But the pits that I'm seeing now that are suffering are mainly places where people are relying on a sprinkler system to water them. In times of adequate moisture, sprinkler systems are fine. But sprinkler systems were made to water grass, not to water shrubs. And when you're in a drought as severe as we are in right now, that subsoil layer where most of the roots of your trees and shrubs are is drying out. And a sprinkler system's not doing an effective job of wetting that down. And that's why we have and are going to have a lot more unhealthy plants around.
I agree there too. So what kind of fertilizer would you recommend?
Same thing we put on the grass. We sell and recommend most highly the Medina Granular. I think for the money it's the best fertilizer on the market. There will be a better fertilizer out, I was hoping by this spring, but maybe by next fall. And that's because we've gotten together with the Medina people. They're going to take their Medina Granular, add extra green sand, add some more nutrients to it, and we will call it Shades of Green fertilizer, and it'll be better. But for now, yeah, I don't think you'll beat the Medina Granular. That's what I use in my vegetable garden. That's what I use on my trees and shrubs and grass. And that's what I use about 1 out of 3 times on my blooming plants. I use Color Essentials the other 2.
Very good, thank you.
Yes?
I have a young landscape.
Uh-huh.
So I have some desert willows.
Mm-hmm.
They're about 3 feet tall. How do I prune them back?
A desert willow can either be a bush or a tree. I would prune it to where it's a multi-trunk tree, just like it would a crepe myrtle. Let it make about 3 strong trunks and cut everything else out.
So the little tiny little branches on the end, they just split right off.
Mhm.
I think they're dead. So
That's the nature of a desert willow. If you want to see a big one, as you walk out, that spindly thing right there, that's the desert willow. And that's just the way they grow.
flip it off or
It's up to you. Strictly cosmetic. Yes, sir, and then I'm going to talk about a couple others.
We're still in the political season here in San Antonio.
We never get out of the political season in San Antonio.
With some trepidation, I would wonder why we don't have some sort of an ordinance on painting trees.
There is one.
Yeah, it's just not enforced. It's more strongly enforced in some of the smaller communities, Hollywood Park and Chavano Park, where oak wilt is more of a problem.
There's a San Antonio ordinance.
It's just not enforced.
But how in the world can city public service get by with whoever that outfit is with the orange truck?
If, city public service has an arborist whose job it is to keep that from happening. But it's just like I wish I could take responsibility for every action of our employees. We don't hire the cheapest people out there and we don't pay the lowest wages, so we get people we don't have to watch as carefully. Unfortunately, city public service takes the low bidder, and it's like an unruly child that has to be disciplined constantly and never learns.
They don't even build the trees.
No, they don't.
One other question. What about deer chewing up the roots? Is that a,
It's not a healthy thing for the plants. And deer, of course, we have 2 different deers. We have grazers like axis and browsers like whitetail. And where they leave wounds on plants, yeah, they're potentially on an oak tree. They could be infectable. Porcupines are a worse problem in the hill country. We have a huge number of porcupines. Nobody realizes that. But they're deadly on trees. Okay, let me talk briefly about tropicals. Bougainvilleas, hibiscus, ixoras, things like that. With bougainvilleas, we have two general groups of bougainvilleas. We have bougainvilleas, the older varieties are what we call short day bloomers. They put on the majority of flowers when the days are short and the nights are long. If you've got bougainvilleas that bloom beautifully in the spring, bloom beautifully in the fall, and you don't have any flowers in the middle of the summer, you've got short day bougainvilleas. They simply are not programmed to bloom during the times of year when we have long days. The better bougainvilleas, the only bougainvilleas we carry, are what we call day neutral bougainvilleas, which don't pay any attention to day length, and they bloom any time. If you have short day bougainvilleas, the old Barber Karst, if you have Barber Karst, Convent, Jamaica White, Sundown, those are, you're welcome, thanks for coming. The older varieties, you definitely want to let them put on their spring blooms before you prune them, or you've just lost 50% of your flowers. And you want to prune those immediately when they finish blooming. If you have the day neutral varieties, you can prune them any time because they will bloom on the new growth that comes out. Now, I hate pruning them when they're in the middle of their full flush of flowers in early spring because you're just losing so much beauty. If you have Juanita Hat, probably the best red around that's day neutral. Prune it late winter or early winter, whenever, so that it puts on a nice flush of growth and blooms in the spring. But if you have one of the ones that only blooms spring and fall, you better let it flower and then prune afterwards. Hibiscus, bloom on new growth. Only reason to prune a hibiscus is if it's gotten too big or if it's frozen back. And then again, if it's too big, prune it back to the size you want it to branch, the spot you want it to branch. If it's frozen back, just prune to take off dead tissue.
I have two Muy Grande hibiscus, and they're not far from each other, and they have in the past gotten 4 or 5 feet, huge flowers, wonderful. Now they're in the shade, and I dig them up.
Yes, do it now. Yes.
We're going to talk about shearing.
Yes. Shearing, thanks for coming. Appreciate it. Shearing is done constantly, and I mean it's just if you want a burr haircut, you're going to have to buzz it real often, or shaved head or whatever else. If you're like me, you let it get shaggy to where you can't stand it any longer, then you go get it cut. Shearing is done as often as it takes to maintain that particular shape. If it's a fast-growing plant like a boxwood, you probably have to shear every 2 weeks in the growing season. If it's a slower-growing plant like a Yopon holly, is actually one of the better choices for shearing or for topiary growth. Probably have to do it about 4 times a year. If you've got ligustrum that you're pruning into those little balls or whatever else, somewhere in the middle, probably have to do it about every 6 weeks.
What about skull caps? I'm always hesitant because of all the flowers.
I virtually never prune my skull cap, and I was facing this dilemma yesterday.
I haven't, but I've thought about it because they get kind of scruffy.
They get awful woody. Yeah.
Yeah, I have that same. Do they have a lifespan that's
Probably about
fairly-
3 years.
Oh, then it might be time to just,
Yeah, after about 3 or 4 years, it's time to think.
mine are much older.
I mean, they're relatively inexpensive. I know everybody hates to do that, but people's value systems are so screwed up. You know, you go out and pay $100 for a good meal and a bottle of wine, but that's the same person that had somebody in the nursery a while back, and this was sometime back before seed really did get expensive. But I remember years ago I worked with Alton Graham, and this person came in and picked up a 39-cent package of seed and said, "Boy, has this stuff gone up." And I thought, 39 cents, how much could it have gone up? But if you enjoy your gardening, you know, put it all in perspective. Sure, you're going to spend some money on flowers, but I went to a seminar one time, and the speaker, you know, said, "Okay, ladies, this is an exercise for you," and he showed this very attractive, well-dressed woman on the screen, and said, "How much did she spend for that sweater? $150. How much those slacks? $100. How much those shoes? $200. How much that purse? $250." Then, of course, he adds, "And what do you think she has on underneath?" But his comment then was, he says, "Do you really think she wants to see the 50-cent begonias?" You know, if you enjoy your flowers, set a budget and plant them, and don't feel guilty about it. But skull cap, periodically, you're just gonna have to spend a few dollars and put some fresh plants in. Spence?
Bougainvillea, how far back, like, I've got the leggy ones, but they're full of flowers, you just cut them back?
Cut them to the point you want them to branch.